When we think about the word acceptance, it often brings to mind either giving up or else getting run over.
Either way, the general feeling about acceptance it tends to be negative, as if by practicing acceptance we're somehow losing. But acceptance is actually one clear way to get action and decision making. So here to talk all about this is our relationship guru, Dr. Kirsten Lind Seal. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here in person.
It's lovely to see you in person.
I
know.
This is great to see you. Why don't we just start with the basic idea of acceptance? How do you define it?
So I think in terms of what we're going to talk about today, acceptance is actually understanding the reality of the situation that we're in, right? Understanding our circumstance and trying to move out of a sense of denial if it's a circumstance that we're not particularly wanting to be in, right? If it doesn't conform to our sense of where reality should be.
Why do we feel like we're giving up, or why do we feel like we're giving in when it comes to acceptance?
Well, right, because we are really rooted to the fact that we would like things to go the way we would like them to go. And we may say intellectually, oh, I get it, I'm not in control, but that's like the task is to go from intellectual actually down through our heart and spirit and really say, wow, I really am not in control of some of these things. And so how can I look at the reality of where I am, whether that's in the micro or the macro, and then from there be able to make decisions going forward.
Can you give us an example of what you're talking about? Like maybe something you've seen in your practice where someone has practiced acceptance that maybe resisted it at the beginning.
Right, exactly. You know, someplace I see this a lot is when I'm seeing a couple and one spouse is struggling with addiction. So this, right, so that the person who's struggling with addiction may be in some denial about what's actually going on, and the spouse also may be, because it's a really hard thing to come to terms with the fact that, wow, you know what, your drinking is actually getting a little out of control. Or if there was an infidelity, you know, of whatever magnitude, and the one spouse is like, that was no big deal, and the other spouse is like, well, why does it feel so bad? If you can within yourself come to the acceptance that here is the situation, then you can decide what to do with sort of a clearer mind and heart. It's a nuance, but it's a really important one, and it doesn't mean rolling over and letting the other person do whatever.
In theory, this sounds easy. But how can you actually practice this?
Right. You know what I say is it's simple, but it's not easy. And one of the things that I think, I mean, this is a go-to for recovery groups, you know, for decades, which is the serenity prayer, which can have God in it if you like. It doesn't have to have God in it. But this idea of understanding that you aren't in control of everything. So it says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then another piece of insight I will give from a meditation teacher is if we can just look around at our situation and say, right now, it's like this. It doesn't mean it's always going to be like this. Exactly. But right now it's like this. Instead of saying, wow, I really wish it weren't like this. This is very painful. I don't want it to be like this. Right? And so, again, we're talking about sort of clarity and understanding where we are so that we can move forward, make good decisions instead of sort of pushing ourselves out of denial, you know, sitting in denial and wishing things were different.
Well, I want to go back to the infidelity thing you were talking about, is to bring it to as more of a specific example. Is this someone that's denying, like let's say the affair happened, or denying that that made someone feel poorly? Like where is that, and how does that get you to where you need to go?
Right. So the answer to that is yes. It could be either of those things. I mean, I've seen both of those things. Somebody who's denying an affair took place, so then you're lying or saying that you're coming to couples counseling to get help, but then you're actually still continuing the affair. I mean, this has been my experience more than once, I'm sad to say. But then the other thing that often happens is, I mean, if it's a sort of an emotional affair, if it's an online thing, people, you know, the people who are engaging in it, it's very easy to convince yourself that it's actually not that big a deal. And then, that the person's overreacting, right? Like this is the kind of thing. And this is where we get into sort of gaslighting, which maybe we'll do a segment on gaslighting at some point.
I was going to say, it feels like based on what you're talking about right now, this is very layered. Like acceptance is a very layered approach. Like you have to know what the layers are in order to accept some of those things.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's hard to do. And the other thing to understand is that if it's a thing that we're trying to accept about someone else's behavior, then they may or may not come to agreement. Exactly. But I mean, if one spouse has had some sort of emotional or online affair, and the other spouse is saying this is really a big deal, then understanding the spouse who is the one who's been betrayed or let down, if they say to themselves, you know what, this is what it is. I don't believe that it's not a big deal. This is a big deal for me. Then they can say, okay, couples counseling counseling, or we need a separation, or whatever.
This goes back to what we talked about before, but having the emotional intelligence to accept some of those things, to hear them, and have that perspective to.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Full circle right there.
Right. Well, Kirsten, it's great to see you, and as
lovely
always,
to be
great to
here.
talk with you. Thank you.